What's up, guys? Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be painting a macaw. This is probably one of my most favorite iconic birds, tropical birds, and I'm going to be painting that today using Rebelle 7 Pro. This is my favorite painting digital software out there. I've used the iPad Pro for a while, for several years actually, and Procreate with the Apple Pencil. That was a great experience, and the iPad is the tool that really helped me develop as an artist, particularly a digital artist. I have converted over from drawing with pencil and using acrylics and oils and watercolor, traditional medium, and really fell in love with digital medium. But now I've kind of gone full circle where I'm going to keep doing digital paintings, but I'm also going to start incorporating some traditional medium, especially acrylics. Since acrylics, those paints dry a lot faster, it will sort of replicate, not really replicate, but it will kind of meet my needs as an artist. Since I have learned to draw digitally, things move a lot quicker. You don't have to wait for paint to dry. With acrylics, paint will dry a lot quicker than using oils, and you can work more efficiently that way. So today I'm going to be working on Rebelle 7 Pro using my Mac, my M4 Mac Mini, superb machine for digital artists who are painting. And I'm going to be working on the base coat, just putting in general shapes and colors, not necessarily trying to go into too much detail today. And I am an emerging artist in regards to animals and landscapes. I've usually painted portraits professionally for a very long time, and that's what I'm very comfortable with. But stepping out of that realm and into painting animals and landscapes, this is going to be a learning adventure. So you'll see that I'm bumbling and stumbling here and there, trying to figure out how to solve some problems here within painting. And as you can see, in this picture, I've already put the general outline. So I've put down with pencil on Procreate, not Procreate, Habit, Rebelle 7. I basically traced the picture, and it helps to save time. I don't like to waste time sketching out a picture. I really would just want to lay down the shapes and forms real quick and then get to work. So that's what I'm going to be working on today. So those of you who have never painted digitally before, or you've used Procreate, you can see that there's a lot of similarities here with the tools, but it looks different because it's a desktop experience. And if you look to, I'm going to move my head out of the way here, drag me over to the left, and if you look to the layer section of the screen where my mouse pointer is, you can see you have the outlines there, not the outline, the layers here. And I like to label my layers so I can remember what I'm working with. And I usually don't work with a lot of layers. I know there's a lot of digital artists that work with a ton of layers. I'm not that type of guy. Because I'm coming from a traditional medium, I tend to try to work with less layers. As a matter of fact, sometimes I might find myself painting with one layer, and it looks just as good as those that would use 30, 40 layers, sometimes more. So I have the background, I have the eyes. I usually put the eyes behind everything but in front of the background layer. Then the general layer of the skin or the feathers or hair, I usually put that there, right above the eyes. And then if there's the beak or the lips or the hair, not the hair, but the beak, because this is a bird, it is kind of, it's above the feathers. And then the outlines on top, because I still kind of use the outline as a guide when I'm painting, and I don't want to paint over the outline. So this is how I work, this is how I flow. Traditional artists, I know, tend to just block things out without too much outline. The way I have it, I have detailed outline because I want to stay as precise as possible. So let's get to work. So as an artist, particularly those that paint with acrylics and oils, watercolors. You want to be as general as possible at the beginning. And I'm gonna start with painting the feathers, okay? Because this is the biggest part of the bird. And I'm gonna pick just the general colors. Start darker, because as I add the details of the feathers, that usually is a lot lighter. And so I'm gonna start off in the corner here, something darker, and I usually pick the colors straight from the reference photo because it saves time. I can mix the colors, I can go in the color wheel, but because I paint professionally and I do commission work and I have to crank these pictures out as quickly as I can, painting as efficiently as possible is key, right? So this is what I'm doing. And you could tell right now I'm trying to be as general as I can, even though I'm staying in the lines. I'm just trying to stay as general as possible. So the brush I'm using one of the oil brushes on Rebelle 7. This one has the texture, so if I zoom in, you can see why I like this software so much. You can see the 3D texture of the paint interacting with the canvas. So I'm zooming in and you can see excuse me, the textures on the canvas, and look at how the pencil interacts with the canvas. You will not find this in Procreate. Unfortunately, this is not a feature on Procreate. Unfortunately. I would stick with Procreate if it had that feature. I really would. You know, I'll probably use it for sketching here and there, but I'll be honest with you, because it doesn't have the real-time physics of excuse me, of paint on the canvas and texture, it really is not as gratifying as painting on. This is the one software that feels like I'm painting on traditional medium, and that's what I was looking for. Because I really don't like the feel of like I'm painting in cyberspace. It just doesn't feel tangible. And another advantage of painting on this type of setup, so I'm using the Huion Kamvas tablet. It's a 24-inch tablet. The advantage of using something like this is you have a much larger screen, so you have to zoom in less. There's less panning and zooming with something like this, which is time saving. Those of you who paint on Procreate, you will probably know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of panning and zooming when you're working on a smaller screen. And you know, it's not bad when you get used to it, because you get used to moving the small screen, and it's very responsive on the iPad. But this kind of eliminates that whole need to do that. So gets rid of all of that. So we're gonna paint this feather, like I said, just trying to be as general as possible. And I'm gonna pick one of the darker colors in the feathers, and I'm gonna lay that down right here. When it comes to painting fur, feathers, and hair, you do want to start with the darker tone, because when you add the texture and the details, the texture and details are usually a lot brighter, and they hold the highlights. And you want to set yourself up for that, and that's usually the top layer. So I wonder how long this type of painting will take for me, because it's, you know, something new. I did a bird recently for my mother, which was fantastic, and it looks a lot better than I thought it would. And so I figured, why not I paint another bird? So I did forget one layer. I'm going to put down the tree layer, or the branch, or whatever he's on, and it should go on top of the feather layer. Let's call it branch. The branch layer. Now, another advantage of painting on this type of setup is that you get these little things right here. You get to use these little things, and I didn't realize how convenient they were to paint with the shortcuts, keyboard shortcuts, to really make the painting experience more efficient. So right now, you probably don't know what I'm doing with this, but I'm actually increasing the brush size while I'm painting. Increasing and decreasing the brush size without taking my hand off of the canvas. This is an incredible, powerful tool to be able to do that. If you're painting on Procreate, you kind of you have to stop painting. Well, you could keep painting, but it's a lot trickier to adjust the size of the brush and paint at the same time. So this really makes this super efficient. Super efficient. And the beak, start painting in that beak. I did choose the correct layer. So this is one thing, if you're learning how to paint digitally and you're using layers, you'll make a lot of mistakes painting on the wrong layer, especially, so this is why I label them. But then it's also like a muscle memory to remember to change your layer when you're changing the location wherever you're painting on the canvas, because you might be painting on something different. So I still make those mistakes. It can be tricky. It can be tricky. So now I'm thinking, because I just did the beak, the skin on that face should be a different layer. And it probably should be under the feather layer and under the beak layer. So, and above the eyes. So I'm going to put in, this might be my last layer. So let's see here. I'll type skin. Chicken skin. Heck yeah. And I'm going to go in one of these corners here and pick one of these darker colors for the skin. And let's come in a little bit more and put in. Now, as you can tell, I chose to paint in a different layer underneath the feathers and underneath the beak, so I don't have to worry about staying in the lines. This saves time. See, I'm just flowing and painting right through there. If you paint digitally, you will understand what I'm talking about. I just started painting with traditional medium again for the first time in a long time, and I was trying to do gestures that I use on digital canvas on the actual thing I was painting. I was painting on a harp, and I found myself trying to double tap with 2 fingers, or zoom in, or trying to erase or undo. It was hilarious. So let's go back to the feather layer, and I'm gonna put the general color right above here. Let's say some kind of dark green for the feathers on his head, and I'm gonna put that in. Okay, so we're just putting the general shapes, not trying to be crazy precise yet. General shapes, general outline. I say this is general. I'm actually, compared to a lot of different artists, I'm being pretty precise. Especially, you can see that I'm staying mostly in the lines, mostly. So yep. It's looking pretty good so far. Looking pretty good. Let's get this corner. So now let's look. Alright, am I on the right layer? Yes, I am. On the feathers, let's fill out this corner. And let's fill out right here. We don't want to see any of these white lines sticking out, white spaces. Okay, so there we go. We got the general shape of the bird, the big shapes. So let's zoom out on the bird and we can see the big shapes. This is the key right now before we start to add the details. So whenever you paint, whether it be traditional, medium, or digitally, you start with the big shapes, the darker colors, if it's paint. Not watercolor though. Watercolor is different. Even in digital watercolor, you start with the lighter. But if you're painting with acrylic oils or anything else, charcoal, you start with the darker shapes and the bigger shapes, and you start to reduce the size of the details that you're putting down over time, and you start to go lighter in tones and colors. That's how a painting should work. It doesn't always flow that way. You will find that you may sometimes need to kind of go vice versa, make corrections. You might have forgotten to put a shape or a color somewhere, and you have to ebb and flow that way. But that's generally how you want to start your painting. So now I'm going to start with the outline. I'm going to put in, not the outline, the background. So let's pick the correct layer here, and we're going to find the correct brush for the background. And I was just using the oils and acrylic brush on Rebelle 7, and the oils and acrylic brush, they have a lot more texture, 3D pop. They're more realistic as far as interacting with the canvas, and I wanted the bird, the focal point, to have that. Let's zoom in so you can see. Let's go on the face so you can see here the strokes of the brush in 3D. And so the background, if you look at the reference photo, does not have texture, and it's blurred out. So I'm going to start putting in the general shapes of the background with a flat brush. So this brush I'm going to use called Express Oils. Express Oils, and they're not going to have that 3D pop, but they will appear to have some kind of texture. And I'm going to choose a smoother brush from here. So let's see if I can find something that is appropriate for this. Let's see what the round brush says to me, and I'm going to choose the darker green and we're going to start putting in the shapes. So I think the dark green here is a good start, and I think this brush is good. So we're gonna stick with that. Just putting in the shapes. You know, I could even paint this whole thing dark. Why don't I do that? Because it'll be a good demonstration on how a background is painted, right? And how you can start with the darker tone and end with the lighter tone to bring out the details and the highlights. And so if you're paying attention, you can see that the dark tone from the green is popping through the layer on the bird, the skin and the feathers. And so I'm going to just erase on there the edges there so it doesn't affect that. So let's choose the eraser. I'm just going to erase right here, and you can see I'm erasing under the feather layer, right on the background layer, and you can see how it's changing things. Whoops, undo. Here we go. Another one of those really cool features. Painting digitally, you can just undo, undo, redo, undo, redo. Now let's go to the feather layer and let's just clean up a little bit. I am kind of a perfectionist, I guess, when it comes to this. Am I choosing the right color? I'm not even choosing the right brush. What is going on here? Oh well, I'll just finish fixing that later. Here we go. I think I'm using one of the wrong brushes here, but it doesn't matter. That's the general outline. Alright, let's go back to the background and start putting in those other shapes, the lighter shapes, well, the darker shapes. So let's darker. I think I can go a little darker. Here we go. Darker. Kaboom. Look at that. You know, one of the things as a developing artist is that a lot of times when you first start out, the painting isn't always gonna make sense, and that's fine. It doesn't have to make sense at the beginning. Sometimes it just looks sloppy, it looks disorganized, it looks like it's not going to turn into anything good, and that is fine, because as the subtlest change and addition can make the biggest difference in what a picture looks like when you're painting. That's what's crazy about this stuff. It's mind-boggling, mind-boggling. So now I'm going to start adding the lighter shapes. Well, you know, I'm going to have to undo this because I'm using the wrong brushes. So this is a really good opportunity to show you how I make mistakes and continue where I left off. So I'm using the wrong brush. So I'm going to pick the acrylic brush that is flat without the 3D render. Okay. Okay. Let's see here. Yes. So we're going to have to start all over on this. Let me check here. On the background, let me see something. Let's see something. Okay. Here we go. Now, this is a really good opportunity to show you what I'm talking about with the different brush types. So if you look here, this mask right here, it's flat. The paint is flat. There's no 3D texture. And that's what I was supposed to be doing when I started painting the background. But look at this. I was painting it with the express oils with the 3D texture. So this is what I like here is I'm gonna get rid of this background layer and put in a new one. So let's see here. And I won't affect my outline. So subtract that background. There we go. And let's stick in a new one. Bring it down to the bottom. And let's call it background. Boom. Okay. And I'm going to pick my Express, or actually, so let me correct this. It's called Express Oils. That's the brush type. That's the one without the 3D effect. Okay. So let's pick the darker color, and on my dial here I've set the Express Oil Brush shortcut to the second key, right? So this is so super quick, and I keep forgetting when I press the other key that it just throws me off, and I end up making a big mistake. So good thing any mistake you make can be undone. Most mistakes. So I'm on Express Oil. Now, the disadvantage of doing the background like this with this size of canvas, because I'm painting on a pretty large canvas. It's a 300 pixels per inch, which is good. That's what you want. But the dimensions are large, and so my brush won't cover the whole canvas. So darn it. It's fine. It just means I'll have to paint longer. And for an artist, we don't mind painting longer. We like to paint. Okay. Alright. Now let's get those darker colors in there on the background. And I picked brush number 2, Express Oils. Here we go. Putting those shapes in, darker shapes. There we go. That's better. Then let's start putting in some of the lighter shapes, lighter colors, sorry. So really cool thing about the Express oils and acrylics is that you can adjust the opacity. So it's transparency of the paint to put down thinner layers of paint. So I'm going to adjust the opacity right now, and you can see here how I can paint over the dark layer and just adjust how that looks right there. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? Just so cool. There we go. All right. So now let's choose a brighter color here. How shall I say, tone? And I'll make sure the opacity is low. Put that in. Boom. Look at that. All right. And I'm going to increase the opacity, and I'm going to... Oh, let's actually decrease it a little bit. Here we go. Opacity. How do you guys say it? Opacity. Opacity. So there's a cool hue to these circles that I'm putting in, and I'm assuming that these circles are probably leaves that the camera kind of made look silly. and just trying to capture that here. And you know, there's many different hues in these leaves here, so we're gonna have to put that in. Here we go. We getting there. I mean, I hate to say it, but this kind of already looks like the picture without any of the colors and shadows and whatnot, and blending done. And a lot of it is because I have the outline there. So that's the one thing. If you're using an outline when you're painting like this, the way I'm doing it, could kind of throw you off unrealistically. So if I hide the outline, and you can see right there how it really changes what you are working with. So I tend to bring the outline in and out just to make sure I'm making progress. It's another part of my work style here. So let's see here. There is a slight yellowish hue to the green in certain places, and it's not a lot, but I'm gonna stick it in there somewhere. And we're gonna put in our cool blue. Cool blue, man. Cool blue. Coolness. This is what it's about. Coolness, man. Coolness. Because we like to be cool. And of course we're gonna put in, oh, see, I chose the wrong brush. We're gonna put in our highlight. Make sure it's nice and bright and white, because that's what's in the picture. It's pretty white and bright. So not all the time does it translate to actually trying to put down exactly what you see. Sometimes you have to do the opposite. And but we're gonna see what this looks like here. I can always start over. Here we go. It's looking awesome, in my opinion. Take out this outline, and now I'm going to start. Well, before I start blending, I have to kind of just clean up the, there we go, clean this up a little bit, make a certain spots a little brighter. Here we go, a little brighter. All right. I don't know about you, but this is feeling pretty good. So the blurriness is going to come from me blending, and I'm going to blend the edges. So that's what I'm using right now. I'm using a blending tool. Blend. Blend, blend, blend. And interestingly enough, you can blend the I I lose my words. You can adjust the opacity of the blender. Interestingly enough. And I'm going to use the blender to create the texture in the blended background, if that make any sense. Rather than putting down color, I can move the color around that's on there already and make it look like how I want it to look. Here we go. There shouldn't be any sharp edges in the background, which I'm trying to get rid of. No sharp edges. Just blurry edges. Blur. Blur, blur. If you have followed me this far into this video, because this is going to be a pretty long video, leave a comment below on tell me what you think about digital painting. Are you a digital artist? Do you use traditional medium? Are you considering switching from one to the other? What has been your experience as an artist using these different mediums? I'm curious. So let's make a little community here and support one another as artists. Now, as an artist, you should feel free to experiment with different tools and without ridicule. And that's what it's all about. So the background is as good as I'm going to get it right now. I'm going to clean it up later on, but just trying to be as general as possible at the moment. So that is the beginning of a beautiful painting, and I will continue to show the process as I try to complete this bird in as little recordings as possible. We'll see how long it takes, but I'm gonna show you each and every step, all my mistakes, and I hope that you enjoy it. Have a good one. Bye.